A series of labor strikes plagued the United States in the late 19-teens and the early 20s. Why were workers so disgruntled? How did the public react to these strikes? In August of 1919, the Boston police force attempted to form a labor union. They joined the American Federation of Labor before being told that, as government employees and public servants, they had no right to unionize. In response, the police force voted 1,134 to 2 that they should go on strike. Not only did they hope to gain recognition of their union, but they were also seeking better wages and improved working conditions. On September the 9th, 1919, the Boston police strike began. 72% of Boston's police force refused to show up for work that day. That night, with no police on duty, the city experienced an outbreak of crime. Most was minor in nature, but many windows were broken, and some stores were even looted. The next night, even more violence and criminal activity occurred. Massachusetts Governor Calvin Coolidge ordered 5,000 members of the State Guard to restore order to the city. Eventually, American Federation of Labor President Samuel Gompers assessed the situation and encouraged the police to return to work. He feared that the lawless situation in Boston would turn public sentiment against organized labor. However, the trust between the government officials and the police force had already been violated. Most of the striking workers were fired from their positions and replaced by out-of-work World War I veterans. Just as the Boston police strike was coming to an end, another labor dispute was beginning. The Amalgamated Association of Iron, Steel, and Tin Workers and the AFL helped to organize a general strike of steel workers across the nation. Again, their demands primarily included higher wages and better working conditions. The strike began on September the 21st, 1919, and succeeded in shutting down almost half of the steel industry. There were striking workers in Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia, and even Colorado. However, the strike collapsed throughout the fall of 1919. By January of 1920, nearly all of the striking steel workers were back on the job. Today, the steel strike of 1919 is viewed as a sound defeat to the cause of organized labor in the United States. In the middle of the steel workers' strike, another strike grasped the nation's attention. The United Mine Workers of America, led by John L. Lewis, began a strike on November the 1st, 1919. Nearly 450,000 coal miners across the nation refused to work. Their demands included a 60% increase in wages, a 5-day work week, and a 6-hour workday. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer attempted to utilize the Lever Act to force the striking workers back on the job. This was a law which made it a crime to interfere with the production and delivery of necessities such as oil and coal. The strike continued into December, but Lewis realized that public sentiment was against them. He publicly encouraged the coal miners to return to work, stating, "We are Americans. We cannot fight our government." The coal miners did receive a significant pay raise, but nothing close to the 60% increase that they had demanded. These 3 work stoppages, as well as other small labor strikes that occurred, were not popular in public opinion. The strikes only increased public fears of organized labor and their supposed connection to communism. In the midst of the Red Scare that plagued the early 1920s, many people feared that such strikes were a prelude to a revolution comparable to the one that had occurred in Russia just a few years before. Newspapers exacerbated these fears by exaggerating the violence and crime associated with the Boston police strike and generating hysteria about the ties between the labor movement and the Russian Bolsheviks. There were even charges that Vladimir Lenin and Leon Trotsky had ordered the strikes and were personally financing them. The strikes had many consequences. They served to increase the distrust between the American public and organized labor. Many workers also became disenchanted with labor unions, and union membership declined rapidly throughout the 1920s. However, the strikes did succeed in raising public awareness of working conditions, as well as increasing wages for many workers. The strikes also made labor leaders such as John L. Lewis well known throughout the country. Calvin Coolidge also became a household name because of his successful management of the situation in Boston.